Welcome back. I'm talking to Max Burns about the Sheffield UFO incident, which took place in 1997. Now, questions were asked in Parliament about this incident, Max. Can you give us the name of the MP and just briefly tell us what was asked?
Sure. Helen Jackson, MP, Labour for Sheffield, answered a number of questions to the Defence Minister. I think it was Speller at the time. One of the questions was, what reports have been collected by the police regarding a UFO sighting and incident in Sheffield on the 24th of March 1997?
So can I just interrupt you there, Max? How did she get wind of this? Did you contact her and try and get her to ask questions, or what was her motivation? Because it's not the typical sort of question an MP would ask.
She was contacted by, acting as a journalist at the time, I'll use that phrase with inverted commas, Dr. David Clark, and she, because she was more interested in the fact that over £60,000 had been spent on a search and rescue operation, which then got abruptly called off at 11:30 a.m. the following morning. So there was enough stuff going on that night for a full, and also there was an air exclusion order for a 10-mile radius around the centre of the incident, which meant that no aircraft or helicopters or anyone could fly into the area, which for me, well, they were closing the area off to stop people flying in, like the press and things like that. So she tabled a number of questions to I think it was George Speller, I think his name was, but I stand corrected, but he was the Defence Minister at the time. And he replied with, no reports of UFOs have been received by my office. That wasn't the question that he was asked. He was asked what reports of UFOs that night had been received by the police. And the fact of the matter is that I've got the police log of the incident, and there was a large number of UFO reports in the police log received by the police. So the Defence Minister didn't answer the question that he was asked.
Now, what is the evidence that a search was conducted? What you mentioned, the closing off of an area, because there's a military term that they use when they close this area off. They send this message out to various parts of the Air Force.
I've actually got a copy of the it's called a NOTAM.
A NOTAM.
Yeah, and that stands for Notice to Airmen, and it was I got it off. I think it's RAF Drayton, it's next to Heathrow. They sent me a copy of the actual NOTAM, and it says an air exclusion order was put in place with a GPS location for a 10-mile square radius. Manchester Airport was informed, although they later denied that there was any such air exclusion order, but I've got a copy of the air exclusion order. Right. So all aircraft landing at Manchester Airport had to divert around the air exclusion order.
All right, so we've got all of this evidence which points to perhaps something crash landing and perhaps a search being conducted, but there are people who say, well, there's no way you could hide a jet fighter crashing in the Peak District. Someone's going to see it, someone's going to know about it.
Oh, well, that's completely untrue. The only other jet that's crashed in the Peak District was a Hawker Hunter jet, a man called, I think his name was Wallace Cubitt. I also have the AAIB, Air Investigation Incident Report for that crash. And the parameters of the crash are that his Hawker Hunter jet crashed into the Peak District bog moorland, generated a crater 60 foot in diameter, and the plane was almost completely buried, and the only evidence above ground was a few bits of wreckage around the rim of the crater, which could easily be picked up, and the rest of the plane was completely submerged. In fact, they've never ever got that plane out of the bog. And Mr. Cubitt, that is his burial site. He is there in the aircraft under the peat bog. So
this was in '94, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Right. All right. So were there any eyewitnesses near where you think the crash site was then, or were there not a couple of fire engines called?
Oh yes, there was a number of fire engines and fire officers. They were called they were at the Strines pub, which is right kind of dead centre of the incident. There was a girl called Sharon Aldridge. She was a bar person at the Strines pub, and her and her friend came out to see what was going on. And the first fireman that they spoke to said that a light aircraft had gone down in the Peak District, and then about 20 minutes later they spoke to another fireman who said that a military jet had gone down, and then when they said, well, we thought it was a light aircraft, he went, oh yeah, that's right, that's what it was. The following day the two girls were interviewed by some plainclothes officers with giant whip aerial on their car, and took full statements off them, but she wasn't completely certain that they were police officers.
You suspect you found the possible crash site? Now,
well, a couple of metal detectorists have uncovered this.
Right. Now, so I read online somewhere that that site where there's this crater is possibly a World War II bomb. You don't think so?
According to the information supplied to me by the two metal detectorists, including photographs of the crater, there's tree damage still visible in a straight line for about 300 feet as it comes down, and the crater is approximately 30 or 40 feet across, and I believe that this is the impact site of the engine, not the main aircraft. Now they've uncovered about 50 pieces of titanium jet engine parts that wasn't used in aircraft until 1969 with the SR-71 Blackbird. And there's only 2 jets ever crashed in the Peak District, and both of them locations are nowhere near this site. This is not a World War II bomb, this is jet engine titanium blades which is in possession, and obviously I'll supply you with the photographs of these.
All right, now let's come on to certain UFO organizations, well, namely Bufora, because as you were investigating this case, you were in touch with various people, because you needed a platform to put out your findings, which would be in the media and in UFO magazines and organizations. So just tell us how that transpired.
It started off because Dr. David Clark, as he is now, he was the press officer for Bufora, and he wrote a 20-page report on the incident before I'd completed my investigation, summarising that nothing had occurred. Usual explanations of a bolide meteor and this kind of thing, and all the usual, scapegoat excuses. And I was blocked from actually presenting my findings for Bufora. Steve Gamble actually resigned as the chairman of Bufora because he came under such pressure. David Clark rang him up at home and told him not to allow me to speak on the Bufora platform. And Bufora, are still holding a report on the incident that night from a witness 25 miles away, who said that on the night in question at around 10 p.m. towards the Peak District Sheffield area, they saw what looked like someone striking a match in the night sky. Now, to see what looks like a match being struck from 25 miles away, I think they've seen the aircraft exploding.
Right.
But I've not been able to get this report. But believe me, that's what the report says.
So Dr. David Clark, he was also a journalist at the Sheffield Star at the time.
He was, yeah.
They put out articles about this incident. So how do you think that they covered this event?
Oh, Clark called it, I got accused of being an X-Files fantasist, but the only person that ever mentioned I like the X-Files, by the way, it was good entertainment. But Clark was the person that coined the phrase X-Files mystery in the peaks, and I've got the newspaper cuttings from the Sheffield Star, and Clark contradicted himself. He's saying things like a thorough search of this is to Mike France, the head of the search and rescue. He said that a thorough search of the Peak District was carried out according to Mike France, and if there'd have been any wreckage, they'd have found it. Well, the same day, Mike France also did an interview with another journalist where he said a thorough inspection of the Peak District has not been carried out, and it would take weeks to cover the entire area. Right. So either Clark's lying or Mike France has made 2 different statements.
Right. Now, we just come on to Clark and Roberts, because they have written extensively, both of them, about UFO cases over the last, well, I don't know how many years.
30 years.
30 years. Now, let's be nice, and I'm going to describe what I believe their modus operandi is without trying to use too many derogatory comments. When you have UFO incidents such as the Bowen Mountain case, Bentwaters case, Sheffield case, the Milton Torres case, where you've got UFO phenomenon and you've also got military involvement, all of those cases. The government have to take a stance on those cases because their military hardware has been involved. So they must have a stance on it, yeah? But they don't actually like to talk about it publicly.
No, they don't make any statements.
They don't.
They use mouthpieces.
Well, you've said it. So Clark and Roberts, in my opinion, will always follow the government preferred narrative and will drive that narrative home again and again and again, no matter what it takes.
They will argue the government narrative to the point of absurdity.
Yes, and in your article in the magazine Notes from the Borderland, you actually accuse both of them of lying in pertaining to the Sheffield incident.
Well, I actually proved that they're a couple of liars.
Right.
And 10 years after that extensive, fully referenced and footnoted article was published, after making a lot of wind about offering a full rebuttal, the silence has been deafening.
Right. And I mean, I just want to make one comment about that type of ufologist. I don't consider them to be ufologists. I consider them, as you suggested, to be unofficial mouthpieces of the government narrative. That's how I would describe them. But what always surprises me is how some ufologists actually entertain them and debate with them and class them as a skeptic. I don't think they're skeptics.
No.
But this is why certain ufologists will write books with them or will share conference platforms with them, etc. To me, they're not really part of ufological research because their modus operandi is government narrative. Now, the government may or may not have good reasons to chase a black triangle around Sheffield or do what they did in Rendlesham Forest, etc. But what I like to know is what is the truth of what really happened.
Clark is now the official spokesperson for the National Archives concerning the release of all UFO documents, and he's also admitted that he's been working for the government. Mm-hmm. He did it in a radio interview a while ago, and he said that was prior to his involvement with the National Archives. But Clark, he's
Steady. Right, anyway, more on the Sheffield UFO incident after this.